There is a quiet truth about life that most people only discover after being hurt. Not everyone who listens cares, and not everyone who smiles wishes you well. Remember a moment when you spoke openly, perhaps about a dream that lit your heart with excitement, or a struggle that weighed heavily on your mind. At the time, it felt natural, even relieving to share. But later, something changed. The energy shifted. The conversation echoed in ways you didn't expect. Maybe someone repeated your words. Maybe they judged silently. Maybe they looked at you differently. Lies something unsettling. Words once spoken no longer belong to you. Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself not because he distrusted others, but because he understood human nature. People interpret through their own fears, insecurities, ambitions, and limitations. What you reveal can be misunderstood, distorted, or even used against you. In today's world, we are constantly encouraged to share everything: our goals, our emotions, our opinions, our private lives. Social platforms reward exposure. Conversations reward openness. But Stoicism teaches something far more powerful: discernment. Strength in knowing what to keep within. Silence is not weakness. Silence is control. When you learn to guard your inner world, you develop a calm confidence that cannot be shaken by gossip, judgment, or external noise. You move through life with clarity because you are not constantly seeking validation. We explore 7 things you should never tell anyone, not because you must hide, but because you must. There is something sacred about a dream that lives quietly within you. Before you speak it aloud, it exists in a pure state, untouched by doubt, untouched by expectation. It is like a flame in a still room, steady and bright. But the moment you share it too soon, you open the door to winds you cannot control. People don't intend to discourage you, yet even casual reactions carry influence. In telling someone you plan to transform your life, start a business, pursue mastery, change direction, build something meaningful, their response might be subtle: a raised eyebrow, a hesitant pause, a cautious comment like, "That sounds difficult." A small hint of doubt can plant seeds in your mind. Marcus Aurelius warned himself constantly about the danger of external opinions. He knew that the crowd can pull even strong minds away from their path. The Stoic approach was clear: focus on the work, not the announcement. So a psychological truth here. Researchers have found that when you talk about your goals, your brain often experiences a premature sense of achievement. The social acknowledgement triggers feelings similar to accomplishment, reducing the urgency to act. Words, talking can trick you into feeling progress that hasn't been earned. How often people speak passionately about what they will do, only to lose momentum weeks later. The energy dissipates because the mind has already tasted validation. Stoics believed in quiet discipline, action before declaration. For nature, a seed does not announce its intention to become a tree. It grows in darkness, strengthening roots before emerging into light. If exposed too early, it would not survive. Ambitions deserve the same protection. Another layer to this lesson lies in human psychology. Not everyone celebrates growth. Sometimes your ambition reminds others of paths they didn't pursue. This can create subtle resistance, discouraging remarks disguised as realism. Here, be careful. Why not stay where it's safe? Again, not always malicious, but limiting nonetheless. When you share selectively, you protect your momentum. Your energy remains focused inward rather than scattered across conversations. So a quiet confidence that develops when you work without broadcasting. You become less dependent on approval. Progress becomes personal. Results eventually appear, they carry weight. People respect what they can see more than what they hear. And showing the world what you built instead of explaining what you planned. The moment feels powerful because it is grounded in reality. Aurelius ruled during chaos, war, and uncertainty, yet he wrote about remaining steady, not seeking applause. He understood that true achievement is internal before it is external. Honestly, how often have you spoken about intention? To be human is to feel deeply. We all carry moments of doubt, pain, fear, and uncertainty. There is a natural longing to be understood, to share our struggles with someone who listens. Stoicism teaches an important distinction. Vulnerability is powerful only when placed in wise hands. Everyone deserves access to your inner battles. Think back to a time when you opened up, perhaps about a personal difficulty or emotional struggle, and afterward felt exposed rather than relieved. That lingering discomfort is often your intuition recognizing that trust was misplaced. Epictetus advised carefully observing the character of those around us, who demonstrates integrity, who respects confidentiality, who listens without judgment. These are the people worthy of your openness. Fortunately, many people listen out of curiosity rather than compassion. Some may unconsciously compare themselves. Others may repeat what you shared. A few may even see vulnerability as weakness. Not cynicism, it is realism. Your struggles are not stories for casual consumption. They are sacred experiences shaping your growth. In carrying a delicate object, you would not hand it to strangers carelessly. Similarly, your emotional truths deserve careful stewardship. Stoics practiced deep self-reflection. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively in his journal, using solitude to process emotions. He did not broadcast every thought. He understood the strength of internal clarity. Rely solely on external validation, you risk becoming emotionally dependent. But when you cultivate inner dialogue, you develop resilience. Not mean suppressing feelings. Stoicism is often misunderstood as emotional coldness. In reality, it is emotional wisdom, understanding what to share, when to share, and with whom. The difference between venting impulsively and confiding thoughtfully. One seeks immediate relief, the other seeks meaningful understanding. Earned through consistent behavior over time, reliability, empathy, discretion. Observe how people respond to others' stories. Do they gossip? Do they mock? Or do they respect boundaries? The answer reveals everything. There is also a strategic dimension. When people know your insecurities, they may consciously or unconsciously treat you differently. Sometimes with kindness, but sometimes with subtle shifts in perception. Your vulnerabilities allows you to define yourself by your strengths rather than your struggles. Warrior tending wounds in private, emerging ready rather than exposed. Connection remains essential. Humans are not meant to face life alone. The lesson is not isolation, it is discernment. Small circle of trust. Choose wisely, speak honestly within that circle. Everyone else, maintain composure. Not because you are hiding, but because you are honoring your emotional space. You will notice something remarkable. Your confidence grows. You no longer feel compelled to explain yourself to everyone. Your sense of self becomes stable. There is a quiet temptation that lives inside every human heart, the desire to be seen as good. To do good, but to be recognized for it. It is subtle, almost invisible. You help someone and a small voice whispers, "I hope they notice." You give your time, your energy, your kindness, and part of you wonders if others will acknowledge your generosity. Not weakness, it is human nature. But the Stoics warned that virtue loses its purity the moment it begins to seek applause. Wrote that true kindness should feel complete within itself, needing no witness, no praise, no announcement. Because the moment we perform goodness for recognition, we shift from principle to performance. How the world reacts to visible kindness. Praise flows easily, compliments arrive, people admire, and slowly, without realizing, you begin to associate goodness with approval. Is intoxicating. It feels warm, rewarding, validating. But it can also become addictive. When you announce your good deeds, whether in conversation, subtle hints, or public displays, something changes internally. Your focus shifts from the act itself to how it is perceived. You begin to measure kindness through external reactions rather than internal values. Weakens character. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to act justly without concern for recognition. As emperor, he performed countless acts of fairness, mercy, and responsibility. Yet his writings reveal no obsession with praise. His compass was internal. So another reality. When people know too much about your generosity, expectations grow. The helpful one, the giver, the dependable one. At first, this seems positive, but over time, it can lead to subtle pressure. People may begin to assume your availability. Some may even take advantage. Eventually set boundaries. They may feel disappointed, not because you changed, but because they built expectations around your openness. Kindness protects both your integrity and your freedom. In helping someone anonymously, no recognition, no acknowledgement, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing you acted according to your values. Healing is powerful because it is independent of external validation. Self-respect. It reinforces identity from within. Stoicism teaches that the highest good is virtue, not reputation, not approval, not admiration. Reputation is fragile because it depends on others. Virtue is stable because it depends on you. So something profoundly peaceful about knowing you don't need to be seen to do what is right. Driven by visibility, we live in a time where exposure is mistaken for connection. People share their routines, relationships, conflicts, celebrations, struggles, often believing that transparency equals authenticity. But the Stoics understood something that modern culture often forgets. Boundaries are essential for peace. Power in privacy. When you reveal every detail of your personal life, you invite not only attention but interpretation. And interpretation is shaped by others' perspectives, their experiences, insecurities, biases, and assumptions. Your life becomes open to commentary. You may notice subtle shifts. Someone offers unsolicited advice. Another forms opinions about your choices. Conversations begin to revolve around explanations, defending decisions that once felt simple. Exhausting. Marcus Aurelius, despite living in the public eye, cultivated an inner sanctuary, a mental space untouched by external noise. He wrote about retreating within himself, finding calm in reflection rather than exposure. He allows you to do the same. Imagine your life as a home. Not everyone who visits needs access to every room. Some spaces are reserved, not out of secrecy, but out of respect. Maintain boundaries. You create emotional stability. Your relationships develop naturally rather than under the pressure of external scrutiny. Relationships in particular. Sharing too much about personal dynamics can invite opinions that subtly influence how you perceive situations. Others may project their experiences onto yours, shaping your emotions in ways that are not helpful. In your personal life, allows you to experience it fully without constant external input. So psychological freedom in not feeling obligated to explain yourself. When you keep certain details private, you move through life with autonomy. Decisions become clearer because they are guided by values rather than reactions. Stoicism encourages simplicity, focusing on what truly matters. Oversharing often creates unnecessary complexity. Something quietly powerful about being comfortable with your own company, your own experiences, your own joys, without needing to broadcast them. Naturally respect those who carry themselves with calm discretion. Mystery invites curiosity, but more importantly, it signals self-assurance. It is not hiding, it is intentional living. It means choosing what to share thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Ask yourself, does sharing this add value or does it simply seek validation? Practicing, there is a quiet strength in restraint that most people never develop. In conversations, in debates, in everyday interactions, there is often an urge to respond immediately, to prove a point, to defend a perspective, to correct someone, to be heard. Modern culture celebrates quick reactions. It rewards strong opinions delivered with confidence. Stoicism teaches something deeper. Wisdom is not measured by how much you say, but by how carefully you choose your words. Epictetus advised his students to listen more than they speak, reminding them that understanding comes from observation, not constant expression. He believed that many conflicts arise not from true disagreement, but from impulsive speech, words spoken before reflection. Moments when you reacted quickly. Perhaps you spoke out of frustration, pride, or emotion. At the time, it felt justified, but later you may have wished you had paused. Have a way of lingering. Once spoken, they cannot be recalled. They shape perceptions, they influence relationships, and sometimes they create unnecessary friction. For every opinion, you expose yourself to endless debates, many of which add no real value. Arguments drain energy. They pull attention away from what truly matters. Stoic learns to ask a simple question before speaking. Is this necessary? Silence becomes the wiser choice. Silence is not weakness, it is composure. When you observe rather than react, you gain insight into people, their motivations, their emotions, their patterns. You understand more because you are not busy proving yourself. So psychological power in being measured with your words. When you speak selectively, others listen more attentively. Your voice carries weight because it is not constant. Aurelius reflected on the importance of speaking only when it serves truth or kindness. He understood that unnecessary opinions often reflect ego rather than wisdom. How often people argue simply to be right. The need to win conversations can overshadow the desire to understand. Stoicism encourages humility, recognizing that not every discussion requires your input. Sometimes silence preserves harmony. Sometimes silence allows clarity. Sometimes silence reveals more than speech ever could. There is also an emotional benefit. When you restrain impulsive reactions, you strengthen self-control. You learn to observe emotions without being ruled by them. It builds inner stability. Imagine being in a heated discussion where others react emotionally. You remain calm, listening, responding thoughtfully, or not at all. That calm presence influences the atmosphere. People feel it. It communicates confidence. There is a certain power in moving quietly. In life, as in strategy, unpredictability protects progress. When others know your plans too early, they can, intentionally or unintentionally, influence outcomes. Sometimes through doubt, sometimes through unsolicited advice, sometimes through subtle competition. It is filled with examples of leaders who guarded their strategies carefully. They understood that plans exposed prematurely often encounter resistance before they are strong enough to withstand it. Stoics believed in focusing on what is within your control: effort, intention, preparation. Sharing plans widely introduces variables you cannot control. Working towards something meaningful, a career change, a personal transformation, a new project. When you speak about it constantly, you invite commentary. People ask questions, they offer opinions, expectations form. Grows. And with pressure comes distraction. When you move quietly, your energy remains focused. You are free to adapt without needing to explain every adjustment. Progress becomes fluid rather than constrained by external expectations. Aurelius often wrote about the importance of doing the work before seeking recognition. He knew that preparation requires solitude, space to think clearly without interference. So a psychological advantage. When others cannot predict your actions, they cannot easily influence your decisions. You retain autonomy. How often plans change. Circumstances shift. New information emerges. If you have already announced your intentions, you may feel compelled to follow through even when adaptation would be wiser. It gives you flexibility. It allows you to refine ideas without scrutiny. There is also an element of confidence. Moving quietly signals that you trust your process. You are not seeking approval. You are not dependent on validation. Simply act. And when results appear, they speak with authority. Think of a river carving through rock. It does not announce its direction. It flows steadily, shaping the landscape through consistent movement. Progress can be the same. There is also a deeper truth. Not everyone wants you to succeed. Some may feel threatened, others indifferent, a few quietly supportive. By keeping plans close, you protect them from unnecessary fear is one of the most powerful forces in human experience. It whispers doubts. It magnifies uncertainty. It can shape decisions if left unexamined. Stoics approached fear differently. They believed that fear should be studied, understood, and confronted internally rather than broadcast constantly. Repeatedly confess fears, you reinforce them psychologically. They become part of your identity, stories you tell about yourself. Anxious. I'm not confident. Each repetition strengthens the narrative. Aurelius practiced examining fears through reason. He asked himself what truly lay behind them, often discovering that many fears were exaggerated by imagination. Power in facing fear quietly. This does not mean denial, it means reflection. When you process fear internally, you develop resilience. You learn to separate perception from reality. You see challenges more clearly. Standing before something intimidating, a difficult conversation, a major decision, a new opportunity. Instead of announcing your fears widely, you reflect, you prepare, you act. Confidence grows from action. Constantly sharing fears can sometimes invite reassurance, but it can also reinforce dependency. You begin to seek external comfort rather than cultivating internal strength. Stoicism encourages self-reliance, trusting your ability to navigate uncertainty. So a practical dimension. When others know your fears, they may consciously or unconsciously treat you differently. Sometimes with care, sometimes with doubt. Your inner struggles allows you to define yourself by courage rather than hesitation. The Stoic practice of negative visualization, imagining challenges calmly, preparing mentally, reducing the shock of adversity. This practice builds quiet confidence because you feel ready. Loses power when examined rationally. It shrinks when